Hello and welcome to today's SecureWorld remote session. Today's topic is understanding how cyber insurance impacts your incident response planning. And our presenter today is Shawn Tuma, who is co-chair data privacy and the cybersecurity practice at Spencer Fane. And I will have to tell you, Shawn is a very engaging presenter. He is on the advisory council for SecureWorld Dallas, and he also is our National Advisory Council Member of the Year. Only one advisory council member per year gets that honor. So we're very grateful for his partnership and the relevant information he has shared with his SecureWorld community and now with you in today's remote session. So excited to have him here. Quick note of introduction. My name is Bruce Sussman. I am Director of Content here at SecureWorld. I also host our weekly podcast, which publishes every Tuesday. And I want to welcome you to this remote session, which is our way of bringing the security community together while all of our face-to-face collaboration is on hold. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things changed, isn't it? And you know, the security leaders I've interviewed at our regional security conferences have told me it's also amazing how quickly things change when you have a cyber incident at your organization. It can feel like the roof is caving in, and this is why incident response plans are so critical. As we're about to find out today, though, insurance could drive the way that gets implemented in unexpected ways. So really a lot to unpack today, and looking forward to learning during Shawn's presentation. Now, before I turn it over to him, I do want to let you know about our Webcaster's Guide to the Conversation. Here are just a few bullet points that will help you. First of all, the slides from today and other resources are available in the resource list. This includes a link to our deep dive web conferences and the calendar for that, and also our podcast episodes. This is meant to be an interactive session, so if you have questions, submit it in the box on the left side of the screen. As far as a certificate of attendance, if you need one for your governing body, it will be downloadable after 40 minutes in the certificate of attendance tab. Audio or video issue. Occasionally, you might lose audio for more than a few seconds, or perhaps your slides aren't advancing. If that happens, 99% of the time, you can solve the problem by simply refreshing your screen or hitting F5. And on demand, yes, we often get the question, are you recording this? Can I share it with my peers on the rest of the security team or whatever, or others in the organization? And absolutely, yes, you can. It will be available after the fact at the original registration link. So those are just some best practices for you. So now we're moving on to understanding how cyber insurance impacts your incident response planning. And wanted to ask with just a little poll question right off the top. Do you know that your company has cyber insurance designed to cover your unique risks? So that's an interesting question, isn't it? Do you know that your company has cyber insurance designed to cover your unique risks? Yes, we have insurance. So audience, if you'd vote now, no, we don't have insurance. Or we have insurance, but I couldn't tell you if it actually covers my unique risk landscape. And that's one thing that I know in interviewing Shawn in previous times, not all policies are created equal. So this is going to be interesting to see where our audience comes in. And here are the answers. So half of you have insurance. You feel pretty confident it's going to meet your needs. And then the other half really either know or not sure. So Shawn Tuma, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome to the remote sessions. And what do you think of this poll response?
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate your kind introduction here, and it is an honor to be here today speaking with everyone, and thank you all for attending. As for these poll results, I think they're actually pretty good based upon the trends we've seen over the years. It seems like companies are starting to get it, that they need cyber insurance, and they're getting cyber insurance. The next step there, though, is to make sure they're getting the appropriate insurance and to make sure it does cover their unique risks. And what I would say is the old presumption is if you don't know you have the right cyber insurance, you probably don't. And so that's a big part of why we're having this conversation here today. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I'll let you take over from here.
All right, great. So the first thing, just to set up the whole issue of cyber and why we're all here, and I think I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but one of the points I've tried to make over the years is that cyber is no longer just a technical issue. It's a legal issue, which is why I'm here in one way. And it's also an overall business risk issue. And, as I've thought about it, I've talked to business executives and I've told them of how important this business risk issue is. And it really dawned on me one day that I cannot think of any other risk that businesses regularly face where the CEO can go to sleep tonight, and lay his head on his plush, beautiful pillows with the company running well, doing fine, production operations going, and then wake up tomorrow morning to find they're completely out of business because of an event that happened overnight, such as a ransomware attack. And we see that, by the way, on a regular basis, with these kind of ransomware attacks. But it's the one risk that I know of right now, other than maybe nuclear war, where in one night, everything can change and can completely impact your operations. So today, as I say this, and we're sitting here in the world of coronavirus, and we're all probably sitting in our homes watching or doing this, this has been a pretty big impact. And it's been a big impact on business, but it didn't happen overnight. It took days. So even in this frame of reference that we're looking in right now, I think a ransomware attack on a business can still be more profound than what we're experiencing right now with the coronavirus. And so, in the position we're in, that's really saying a lot, but I think it stands to reason. And so what that means is, there really is no other issue that I think rises above cyber in importance to the organization. And why is that? I mean, what we know about cyber is there is no such thing as being completely secure when you're dealing with things in the cyber world. At some level, someone somehow using some technique or tool, if they really want to bad enough, can probably get into just about anything that's out there. And there will be attacks, and there's no longer the time of saying, it's not going to happen to me, because what we did see that was such a game changer with ransomware is that the old excuse from companies of, our data is not that important, or nobody knows who we are, or nobody wants what we have. Ransomware changed that, because no one else may want it, but you want your data, you want access to your networks, and if you don't have it, you're willing to pay money to get it back, and the hackers figured that out. And so, it really was a game changer. And the fact is there will be these attacks. And I talk a lot about ransomware because we deal with so many ransomware cases as, breach counsel and leading that process. But there are going to be losses. And so when we're thinking about that, the key is to be resilient. And I've used many different examples over the years of quotes that I think summed up resilience. But I think the, great, profound philosopher Rocky Balboa really nailed it. Now I'm going to stop and let y'all laugh for a second there. The profound philosopher Rocky Balboa nailed the environment that we're in right now. And that is, it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And in today's environment, I think that's how we have to approach it. We're going to get some hits, but can we stay operational? Can we keep our business moving forward and deal with those hits in a way that isn't going to be catastrophic to us? And so then the question is, how do we become more resilient? And in my experience, and I've been in cyber law for 20 plus years now that I've been dealing with various forms of cyber issues. But serving in the incident response capacity, which is where most of my work is right now, there are two things that I have found to be absolutely critical to the resilience of a company when they get a hit. So how well they can handle and respond to those hits. And one is cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is what pays for you to do what you need to do to have a proper response. And what I mean by that is, when you get one of these attacks, even a ransomware attack, when you have your backups, you're still going to have a hit. You're going to have many times the time it takes to move and make, execute and restore those backups. So it's going to be some sort of a delay. There's some sort of a problem in most cases, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic. And the key to responding to an incident, or an intrusion into your network that maybe is exfiltrating data, is how quickly can you identify it and stop it and do the things you need to do to keep what is a small matter from becoming a really big matter. And the key to that is your ability to properly respond. And many times that means bringing in professionals to help with that, bringing in a team of combination of cyber forensics, security, decryption, what have you, to help. And especially for small and mid-sized business, that ability to bring in that team very quickly and on a moment's notice is a tremendous differentiator between a successful response and an unsuccessful one that leads to problems. And many times the only way a company has the resources to be able to do that is by having the cyber insurance coverage available to pay, because I can promise you, as much as I love what I do, I don't do it for free. I am not doing this, as pro bono work. I expect to get paid. And so somebody's got to be able to do that. The forensics firms I work with, we have some great people that we work with at some great firms. They're not doing it for, you got to have the ability to pay them. You got to have the ability to cover those costs. And insurance is oftentimes such a critical piece to that we are seeing a very strong correlation in the ability to respond and recover between those companies that do have cyber and those that don't. And then the second thing, and I know all of y'all know this, is incident response planning. And that is, that's how you know what you need to do, when you need to do it, who is doing what, and how. And it's critical, because time is of the essence when something adverse happens and you've got to start dealing with it. Basic process for our incident response planning, from where I see it, which is in my legal and my breach counsel role, is you've got to determine your leaders, who are going to be the leaders of the process, who are your key internal and your key external players that are going to be involved. You develop your incident response plan. This includes developing the communication protocols and the retention of your external players, the people you're going to be counting on, whether it's your managed services provider, your security forensics firm, your decryption firm, notification vendor, public relations, and of course, your legal firm. Getting all those people on board, getting your engagement agreements in place, getting your communications, your telephone number, your mobile number, your email, your backup number, your backup email, all these things in place and getting them ready to go. Because I'll tell you what I have found out of all the incident responses that we've led over the years is the single most important part of any incident response plan that we look to is that page dealing with communications. It's knowing who the players are and knowing how to reach them on a moment's notice. That is the most important part that we ever need, because, we generally have a pretty good idea of what we need to do, and we're learning that in real time oftentimes. But having the ability to reach the people we need to reach and get them engaged quickly is really what I find to be most critical. And so, then the next step is you educate your players on their roles. You have practice, like any good team. You do that through your tabletop exercises, and then you refine your plan, get prepared to execute it when you need to. So that's the process. Now, let's see. We have a poll question here.
Yes, thank you. Let's take a look at that question, and thank you, by the way, for that level set, Shawn. That was great. Here's the question: are the external vendors in your incident response plan approved under your cyber assurance, or do you think they need to be? So go ahead and make a choice here. Wait, what? I didn't know that was a thing. Or yes, our vendors are approved by our insurance provider. Or no, we didn't realize until after we purchased the insurance. Or we don't have insurance right now, but good to know that we should look at that. So take a second to answer. And while you do, Shawn, I just had to say I loved your Rocky Balboa quote. That was classic. The kids wanted to watch Creed, which is like the sequel to Rocky Balboa, right? And he's used that very quote in one of the movies, and they've been quoting him since that time. So that's a good one.
Man, look, my kids and I have watched it several times. We love those movies, and especially the Creed, and then the Creed 2 with Dolph Lundgren. Yeah, I've always loved Dolph, but you can never beat Rocky with the quotes,
That's right, and the philosophy. Very good, very good.
Now, look, if we were doing this at happy hour and we were all, slamming scotch over here, it may sound like Rocky talking.
That's right. Very good. All right. Well, let's take a look at the results to the poll question. And 40%. Wait, I didn't know that was a thing. So you're in the right spot today then. So Shawn, I'll let you take it from here.
Man, look, this is, I hate to say it, but 35% is positive based upon what we're seeing. 35% who've known to ask these questions and look at these issues is a very positive result. But let's hope that by the time we get to the end of today, we're well on our way to 100% with this. So thank you all for answering that. So while we're playing make-believe, let's imagine this scenario. Reach down, pet your dog, or, get you another cup of coffee or whatever, close your eyes, and let's think through this. So you take the lead in your company on the incident response planning. You go through the effort of creating this incident response plan. You set up your agreements with all your external players, get them ready to go, signed up. You develop your communications protocols, train the incident response team on their roles and responsibilities, and you practice. Now you are ready to go. You're like Rocky going in there to knock out the big Russian. You're just tuned up and ready to go on a moment's notice. You get word you have an incident. While you're not exactly excited about that, you are glad that you have this plan in place. You activate your plan, you begin execution. Only then do you discover that not only does your company have cyber insurance, but that insurance policy specifically dictates what vendor or professional service firms you can use, and none of those approved vendors are the ones that you included on your external incident response team. Okay? That's a problem. So here you are. You need to be calling that cybersecurity firm, that forensics firm, right now to get them in to deploy whatever tools they're going to deploy to determine what's going on in your network. But they're not on your team. You need that all-important breach counsel. We know a few. And need them involved so you can get your agreement in place, start your attorney-client privileged investigation. Turns out the one you had written down that you called isn't able to help. What do you do? So instead of executing your plan with your team you had planned to use, now you've got to get on the phone with your insurance carrier and you got to get on the phone and start finding out what vendors are available, or you've got to start the negotiations with the carrier to determine if you can use the people you have in place. And if you don't, you're jeopardizing your coverage, and you're jeopardizing having the insurance company pay for all of those incident response costs. It doesn't mean you can't get it worked out, but it means you're taking on a mighty big risk because you may not be able to. So let's look at where this problem started. When you began your incident response preparation, you did not know, does your company even have cyber insurance? And sadly, most of you on this call are probably in the technical side of things within your organization. And they didn't even include you or don't include you in that procurement process, even though you have a critical role in acquiring your cyber insurance. Many times our technical folks aren't even being included in this discussion. And that's crazy because those applications require a lot of information about what your company's doing or not doing. And without your input, they're not able to accurately answer that. So you need to be involved in that process. But unfortunately, right now, you don't even know. You didn't know what was generally covered or not covered under the policy. You didn't know how quickly your notifications must be given to your carrier, especially for getting pre-approvals, which are the norm before you take steps such as paying a ransom or hiring or you don't know how to give notice to your carrier. You don't even know what your policy number is or who the carrier is. We have seen these cases where everything involving cyber insurance is left on the network when you're dealing with a ransomware case. And so you literally cannot get to the information you need to put people on notice and make a proper claim. You don't know if you're allowed to select your vendors, whether they must be approved or not. The pre-approval issue. So in other words, you didn't understand the interaction between your cyber insurance coverage and your incident response planning, and that is a very common problem. So why does this occur? Well, first, we do encounter this a lot, and I absolutely hate it, especially whenever it's people who are calling me and it turns out they have insurance with someone who's not going to work with us or we're not pre-approved. And because of that, the first question I usually ask at the beginning of an incident response engagement is, do you have cyber insurance? And if you do, who is the carrier? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to waste their time or mine going through a lot of discussion. If I know good and well, they're going to have to go and have that same conversation again with someone else. It's just wasting their time, and time is the most precious thing they have in that scenario. So why is it happening? There are now over 100 different insurance carriers that are writing these cyber insurance policies, and those policies vary greatly in many respects. One of the most significant respects is how the policy addresses the use of vendors and professional service providers under that policy. So I'm referring to your cyber, your forensics firms, public relations firms, your notification vendors. These are the people who do the mailings and provide the credit product, set up the call centers, all those things, your forensics accountants when you need them, and of course your legal breach counsel. All of those are vendors that are typically used and that the policies specifically address in many cases who can and can't. So ultimately, the problem we're seeing comes down to not knowing your policy, and without knowing your policy, not being able to do effective incident response planning. Because the key to that is knowing who's on your team. And if you don't know who's on your team, you can't move forward from there. And again, when we're in this situation, for anyone who's been in an incident response, for a significant incident, that nerves, patience, time, those are the key things you need right now. And time and that pressure is the one pushing all of it. And the last thing you need to be doing is fooling around with this kind of stuff. So let's look at a couple of the different approaches that these different policies have, because while I like some, I don't like others for various reasons. There are good reasons why these policies are being written in these ways. And it really is to give the consumers, the businesses out there, the choice so they can get the right policy for their needs. Here are a few of the more common approaches. One is absolutely no restrictions. You can use any vendor you choose. The policy doesn't even address that issue. There are those policies. They're not very common, but they are out there. Two is you can choose the vendor, but the carrier will want to vet and approve who that vendor is going to be before signing off and saying, have at it, you can use them. Three is you can choose your own vendors as opposed to the panel vendors, but you're going to have a financial incentive to go with the panel vendors. There's one carrier in particular that I'm thinking of that will allow you to use your own vendors not approved, but your policy limits are reduced by 50%. So if you have $5 million in coverage, you will then only have $2.5 million in coverage if you go off panel. Three, pre-approval of vendors you choose before there's an incident. So let's say you decide as you're sitting here thinking that there's a security firm that you really want on your team, you already have a policy. If you go and approach them now before you have an incident, the odds are much better that you can get them written into that policy so that they can be on your team. But I would note that it's usually a lot easier to do this during the procurement process before you pay the money. We all understand why, because when people are trying to get a deal closed, they're a lot of times much more willing to negotiate and take care of those things. And then there are the very strict approach where the carrier absolutely will not allow anyone to use any vendor that's not on their approved panel. And there's a very good reason for that one. And it's one I didn't understand until recently when I had a conversation with the head of that carrier that I'm thinking of. And the reason is all your vendor costs typically are paid for out of your cyber insurance policy. So if you have a $5 million policy and all of your vendors end up being $250,000 in fees, that erodes your policy. For this one particular carrier that will not allow you to go off panel on this policy, their vendor fees do not erode their coverage limits. And so because they're basically eating those costs, they have a very strong incentive to make absolutely sure their vendors are working at very, probably preferable rates and follow the process that they put in place. Now, most of you probably hear this and say, I don't want to give up that kind of control over my incident response. Well, at the same time, there are a lot of other people who are thinking, you know what, I like knowing that there's a team in place that knows what they're doing and that knows how to manage this, and I don't have the capability to do it myself, so that is a good thing. So the point is, there are a lot of different approaches. You need to pick the one that's right for you and your situation. Now, I would note that most of the carriers do have some kind of requirement. And again, even if you can negotiate it and get your preferred vendor, you are losing precious time, especially if you're thinking about the afternoon, which is when these things always seem to happen. You want to be responding today. You don't want to be trying to make connections with someone today so you can start negotiations on who you can use so that maybe next Tuesday you can have an answer and you can get started doing the things you need to do. Nobody can operate like that, and that's not the way to conduct a proper incident response. So, what are the reasons for these vendor requirements? There are many, but here are a couple of the most important ones. Carriers want to vet the vendor's expertise to make sure that they really and truly know what they're doing and that they have the capabilities to handle these cases. I know in the context of legal, there are a lot of attorneys out there who are now jumping in on cyber privacy. Not a lot have handled numerous cases like this. There are several that are outstanding attorneys in this area that I would call if I needed them, because I know how good they are, and their friends, their colleagues. But the insurance carriers want to make sure that whoever they have handling this knows what they're doing, because one little slip can really mean a lot of damage in one of these cases. Second, financial incentives. The carriers negotiate, the rates with these vendors and require them to work at a lower price point for their cases than they ordinarily would for a non-insurance case. So given that these costs are eroding your policy, there is a financial incentive there for you to have someone working at the negotiated rates. Also, typically the vendors don't require a retainer whenever they're doing the work for the insurance, because they know the insurance company is going to be good for it and going to pay those bills as they always do, as opposed to whenever someone comes to us off the street that I don't know, I've never dealt with before. We're going to require a retainer up front, because I want to make sure we're going to get paid, and people don't mind stiffing lawyers when it comes to fees. So that all takes not only money, it takes time. So that's another benefit. And then another aspect is there is a certain process we have to go through when working with these insurance carriers. Approvals, updates, flow of communications, all of that is important. And the insurance carriers want to know that the vendors they're working with are familiar with that process and are willing to comply with their requirements. So what's the solution here? The solution is, to do what I'm doing right now with our firm clients, because as I said earlier, I hate when I get a call and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a fun case to work on. I like these people. I know I can help them. And then I find out they have insurance coverage with that carrier that I know is not going to work with us, and we work with quite a few. We're on several approved panels, but not all 100, not even close. And so I hate it. I hate it even more when it's our firm's own clients that have a relationship with us, look to us as their trusted provider, and they didn't know to go and do these things that we're talking about right now. And now they're being sent to one of our competitors. So that stings. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to all of our clients and telling them, we want to make sure you get the appropriate cyber insurance policy to cover your unique risks, number one. And then number two, we want to make sure that if they have vendors in addition to us, we hope they want us on their team. But if there are other vendors, we want to make sure that they're all either on the approved panel or that we get them written into the policy now or before they purchase the policy. And so these are the things you need to do. Make sure you reach out, get this done. If you don't have a vendor preference, start now to get your carrier's approved panel list. Start talking with those vendors, vet them, get to know them, determine who you want to work with, and then take the steps now to get them engaged proactively on the policy. And there's something else I really need to mention. It's a little subject, but it's important. A lot of these insurance policies have included in the premium proactive risk management services. So they have retainers with certain firms that will help with an assessment of your network. They will help with some incident response planning, and they'll provide those services, and it's free of charge to the policyholders. So know if that's available, and if it's something that's a benefit to you, take advantage of it, because it's already covered, and it's a lot better than not having anything. So if you already have cyber insurance, reach out to your carrier and ask to get the people approved and written into the policy that you want to use. Or, like I said, get that list of approved panel and start making those arrangements. And so, I don't know how everybody handles their own insurance work, but what I have found is the best way to get the best coverage with the right carriers is that you need to work with a knowledgeable broker. Your broker is your key to getting the best coverage. And there are a lot of brokers out there now that are willing to sell cyber. Heck, anybody's willing to sell cyber if they can get paid for it, right? We all get that. But you need someone who is truly knowledgeable of your business, your risks, and your the cyber insurance market and what your needs are. And the key to that is to really have a good broker who has different carriers they can go to get an appropriate policy with an appropriate carrier that's going to fit your need. And, what I would suggest and offer is, like we're doing with our clients, anybody who has a question on that, or who needs a referral to either a carrier we know and trust or a broker that we know and trust, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm not going to send you a bill for it. Just say, hey, Shawn, saw you on SecureWorld, have a question about this and need a little guidance. Will you help? And I'll be happy to do so. So that's all I have on this topic. We could talk cyber insurance all day, but I know we have short attention spans when we're multitasking at our computer monitor. So I'm going to leave that there. And let's see, Bruce, where do we go? Questions?
Yeah. Well, we've definitely got a lot of questions, and great. There's your contact information. So want to be sure and put that up there, Shawn. So if anybody's got questions, don't call them right now, though. At least wait till the web conference is over.